Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. There are characters that resonate better for readers than others right off the bat, and those others they never really jive with, and then there are those that take time to grow on you. Such was the case with me and Stephanie Brown, aka the Spoiler. Now, I never really disliked Steph. I first saw her in ads for Robin number 16 and didn't really get much about her when she was already established. I was just getting into comics, and my collecting was a bit on the spottier side. All I knew was that she was outside the core group of Bat allies. The dynamic duo knew her identity, but she didn't know theirs, nor did she have access to all their wonderful toys. To mark her 30th year in comics, albeit inconsistently, I'm taking issue with Stephanie's first appearance to see just how she got started. Let's begin with Detective Comics number 647 and see if this debut makes us want to turn the page or turn our heads. Won't be getting too detailed into the covers. They're done by Matt Wagner, I forget which. Simple scenes of the dynamic duo, nothing particularly story relevant, but still very good. Written by Chuck Dixon with art by Tom Lyle, Scott Hanna, and Adrian Roy, we begin with the Clue Master surprising a gang in their hideout.
I thought insurance salesmen were pushy.
They at first plan to shoot him, but for whatever reason, their eye-patched boss, Cutter, wants to hear him out. Yet one goon pulls a gun anyway, so Cluzy throws a plastipellet at him, encasing his arm in an epoxy that renders his weapon useless and knocks him aside. Your gun is ruined, but your shirt should dry clean easily. The epoxy is soluble in water. Nice of him to explain how this amazing weapon would lose a water balloon fight. He offers his services of planning high-return robberies without drawing heat from police. Wily Cutter, you, on the other hand, draw lots of heat. Which reads kind of odd to me. I think it'd be more grammatically correct if it was you, on the other hand, Wily Cutter, etc., etc. One goon, Jimmy Fish, points out the uninvited guest's run-ins with the Batman and history of leaving clues to his crimes. Cluemaster says he needs a gang to carry out his operations, has no intentions of taking over, just a percentage of their haul, and an interested Cutter is willing to listen. Before I start, have you heard about the amazing therapeutic properties of essential oils? A drug bust gone south has resulted in two crooks taking hostages in an apartment and cutting off elevator and stair access, leaving the police outside and Commissioner Gordon unsure what to do. The guy making demands isn't certain how he and his associate are getting out of this either, hitting his head to help himself think. And here comes Batman and Robin, presumably to help the thought process in much the same way. Kabong!
Very good, sir.
Later, the news reports on the aftermath, Gordon not confirming eyewitness claims of the Dark Knight's involvement. However, former district attorney and mayoral candidate Armand Krall derides the police as underfunded, poorly trained, and unmotivated. That's why my campaign runs on this simple promise. A chicken in every pot and an uplifting cap poster for every cop. This page is our first look at Steph, as Krall calls it a shame that a vigilante protects the city, regardless of his intentions. Then we immediately go to Arthur leading a robbery that goes off without a hitch, much to Cutter's delight when he sees their ill-gotten gains later. He asks if Artie left any clues, per his trademark, but he was cured of that impulse by a shrink in Blackgate Prison, not affecting his criminal instincts. But there was no time to work on his fear of alligators jumping out of the toilet. His puzzlements were an attempt to compensate for his lack of self-esteem, show off his superior mind. But now he just wants to be rich. In appreciation, Cutter gives him 10% of their take, as he originally wanted, and is keen to know what else he has in store. As Cluemaster begins giving them the basics on a more ambitious plan, a purple-clad figure eavesdrops with a handheld listening device. This is the weirdest Knicks game I've ever heard. At GCPD, both Gordon and Sarah Essen bemoan Krall using Batman as a way to make the police look incompetent, even though as DA, he knows about Gotham's unique breed of criminals. Jim opens an envelope containing a puzzle piece, paper-clipped to a note that says, "Catch me if you can." Oh, great. First Joker, then Two-Face, now Leonardo DiCaprio. Bats and the Boy Wonder respond to the signal and identify the piece as cut from a photo, but of what is unclear, though anticipating more to be sent soon enough. And now their evidence has suddenly reversed. Seems to be a bit of an art goof.
No fingerprints?
Just mine.
Jim, it was you. How could you betray Gotham like this? You're under arrest.
In the cave, our heroes eliminate most of their initial suspects known to utilize puzzles in their crimes. That leaves Cluemaster booked as a John Doe, but he should be easy enough to track down. However, Jigsaw cutting a photograph lacks a fleshy panache, so this could be a new player, meaning they'll need to wait for the next clue. They won't have long to wait, as we see Stephanie putting another piece and attached note into an envelope for Gordon. She's surprised by her mother, whom she thought was resting, and goes with her assumption that it's a school project. Yeah, it's like a report. For math. What does the square root of the hypotenuse mean to me? Crystal asks if she's heading out, needing a prescription refill. Steph cautions about her pill intake, going through a bottle per week, but her mom insists she'll get sicker without them, become a constant nervous wreck, guilting her daughter into relenting, who says she is heading out later while hiding her next envelope. And her bleached hand, apparently. I guess someone forgot she was wearing gloves in the other panels and forgot to add that detail in the line art. Also, apparently GCPD is at One Justice Plaza, which is ludicrous and hilarious and great all at once. We go to Batman and Robin questioning their prime suspect on the street, who is trying to run but of course doesn't get far.
You weren't an easy man to track down, Cluemaster. Or is it Arthur Brown? That's what you finally decided to call yourself. Using your real name. Both clever and unexpected. You diabolical mastermind.
Artie insists he's done his time, hasn't got anyone to report to like some parolee, and only ran because it looked like the guy dressed like a bat was chasing him. He got scared, like the whole point of the get-up. He starts sweating as he insists that he was cured of his mental impairment and got genuine help in prison, claiming he was never really a criminal. Sure, committing crimes doesn't make you a criminal if you have some personal hang-up, and that's how that works.
No, it isn't.
He's free of Cluemaster and any delusions, and Bats would like to believe him, not wanting their paths to cross again as the duo take their leave. Later, about 2 weeks apparently, because 5 more puzzles arrived for Gordon, each 3 days apart, giving the image of a castle. With 6 pieces left to go, that leaves 18 days before it's completed, around Labor Day weekend, which may be significant. The very image of a castle may be a clue itself. There's a monkey castle at the zoo in Coventry. Oh, sweet mercy, someone's planning a royal monkey assassination! Warn the Prince of Capuchins! This adds to political stresses for Jim, as Kroll is making police effectiveness a big issue, and would appoint Doberman as commissioner if it would get him elected. But I'm house-trained, dang it! Those photos of me on my neighbor's lawn are taken way out of context. Bats feels he and a sidekick end up embarrassing Gordon, since they've no bureaucratic restraints, though they can never replace the police department. As Jim laments that Kroll seems bent on convincing the public he's some useless old fool, Bats does what a good friend would, and disappears on him mid-sentence.
Yay, you hurt my feelings.
Cluemaster has readied the best part of any heist. Syllabuses! Everyone's task detailed on their next job so they can study them together.
Nerd!
However, Jimmy saw him get hassled by Batman, and word from Cutter's contacts say that police have been getting puzzle pieces of a castle sent to them, so he wants answers from Cluemaster. Artie doesn't know anything about it, swearing he's past leaving such clues, but they intend to kill him anyway. Cluesy throws a smokescreen and, thanks to years of prison fights, has both fighting skills and a mean streak that lets him swiftly defeat the goons. He tosses a capsule at Cutter, covering his nose and mouth in a fast-setting resin that cuts off his air. It can only be affected by a solvent that Brown just so happens to not have on him. He then nominates himself as new leader while the old one suffocates, to no objections. Doesn't take much to intimidate this lot, does it? You'd think someone would want to take him out for a power grab, even if they couldn't save their boss. As the blue-masked figure watches from a skylight, Arthur decides their next order of business is to kill Batman, Robin, and whoever is cluing in the police. Issue 648. Looking like one of the Blue Lanterns is trying to get Pointy Ears' attention. Impressive feat considering they didn't exist in 1992. It's 3 a.m. and the new Cape in town is wrapping up a new clue. Let the puzzlement fit the crime. Painted on the side of a skyscraper. They have to get it now. I don't want to have to resort to Plan B, letting half of Gotham burn to the ground. It's a message related to the jigsaw pieces, as Batman suspects when he, Gordon, and Robin discussed several other sites that were also painted, all buildings empty at night, but the other messages were more like riddles. Since the paint was water-based, vandalism is out, and it must all relate to whatever crime is being planned for Labor Day.
The desperation of these clues almost confirms that, Commissioner. Another sick mind crying out to be caught, or at the very least be spared a subpar reinvention.
With 3 days left, our heroes step up their search the old-fashioned way, punching criminals for information. First, a guy named Mousy, or Moosey, he's called both, who's fencing VCRs because 90s, then a restaurateur claiming to have gotten out of the crooked life but still has some connections, giving up that Arthur Brown has been looking for some quick hires for a job. Since Gordon and the police have been getting such a bad rep lately, and their tolerance making the vigilantes' work somewhat easier, Bats decided to let them have this one. Harvey Bullock and Renee Montoya lead 2 officers to bust down Artie's apartment door. The lights won't turn on, and they hear a voice talking to Bats and his sidekick as a figure sits in an easy chair. Sensing something amiss, Renee orders everyone out, as Robin sees someone dart by and give chase, giving him a chance to practice his rooftop pursuit skills. Because what could go wrong with letting him go off alone after a mysterious person in what was just referred to as practice? It's Cutter's body in the chair, note the resin on his face, dressed up in Arthur's suit, with a note that reads, "Batman, fall down and go boom." Bet Bruce would have found that rather condescending had he not given this win to the cops. Montoya could tell the voice was recorded, and fortunately all the badges got out in time before the explosion. Robin catches up and tackles his quarry, expecting it to be one of Cluemaster's gang. Pulling off the mask, he's surprised to see a blonde girl, who then clobbers him with a brick. And they called it puppy love. Steph runs off, with Drake looking more amazed than I would think one would be after being hit in the face with a brick, while Bullock calls the fire department. Montoya heads back inside to see if anyone needs help, and fortunately there was only one other family that lived on that floor, which Batman helped get out. And someone graffitied "Stop Crack" on the wall near the staircase. What a surprisingly optimistic message. In his hideout, Cluemaster seems assured the cops think he's dead, while the Bat really is dead. "I had to blow up my record collection, but I can replace them with CDs with the loot from this score. Unless at some point in the future vinyl makes a big comeback while CDs lose relevance to another format, then this would really tick me off." Cue Jimmy Fish putting the kibosh on his hopes, stating that the cops had busted into his place, not pointy ears, and no one was killed in the big kaboom.
"I thank God every day I didn't get exploded."
Artie calls this a disappoint. I'm pretty sure he meant disappointment, but at least he's thought dead for now so they can go through with the heist. Until then, more studying, until the goons know their jobs in full detail.
Nerd!
Jim meets with the current mayor of Gotham, who's not running again, but has an interest in the election. With the opposition party's candidate not looking great, he introduces who he expects to succeed him, Armand Crawl, the guy bad-mouthing the cops to the city. In the cave, Robin ponders how the clues they've found relates to the young lady in the cape that totally surprised him, not overpowered him. Get it right, Alfred. 2 of the riddles are easy. A lumberjack shops at a chopping mall, and jam you don't put on bread is a traffic jam. I don't know, I think there are other answers that could work for that one. Door jam, toe jam, pearl jam. He struggles with what's closed when opened and opened when closed, which Bruce reveals is a drawbridge. Cluzy's target is Castle Land Park, a new mall that's hosting a charity telethon.
That climax is on Labor Day Sunday.
Phrasing.
To get there involves crossing a drawbridge, which Tim is surprised he figured out with those clues, but Wayne admits constant TV commercials helped. Batman, world's greatest detective, as long as local advertisers are crazy repetitive. He's headed out solo, wanting Drake to get some sleep for tomorrow's daytime work, tracking that girl he chased down. Bats talks to Jim in a more sociable capacity, hoping to help keep him on as commissioner, but it turns out Kroll has no intentions of replacing Gordon. He knows there's some partnership between the Cape and the cop, and is afraid Jimbo's ouster would put an end to the Bat as well, unaware that he'll be around so long as there's crime in Gotham. Jim's job is safe, but he really doesn't care to be used for politics. 2023 here, and let me say, your naivete is refreshing. Tim is going over Cluemaster's prison file and notices he was visited a few times by Mrs. Agnes Bellinger. There's an address, but no relation marked down. It's unlikely someone that seems about as young as Tim could be described as a Mrs., barring something else rather illegal, but it's a lead. The next day, after a few hours of skateboarding near the address, Tim sees Stephanie arrive at her house on her motorbike. Wow, she's so pretty I want to throw a brick at her as a hormonal impulse of confused feelings, and not as payback. When she later heads out in costume, Robin surprises her and they crash into a hedge. After composing themselves, the understandably irritated Stephanie clarifies she wasn't at Cluemaster's apartment to save him, but to ensure no one else got hurt. She resents her world-class psycho of a dad, preferring he'd rot in jail, making Tim realize she's the one that sent those clues to Gordon. Hearing he may still be alive, she lets Bird Boy hitch a ride as they meet up with Batman on a spire, who confirms an autopsy had revealed it wasn't Artie in that explosion. Steph suggests it was Cutter Stark, and further guesses that they realized someone was listening in on their plans, so revealed just enough to imply that they were going to off the bat. This read weird and contradictory to me at first. Yeah, you could say that those guys Batman and Robin interrogated were intentional breadcrumbs to lead them to that apartment. The way Steph puts it, that he wanted someone to think he was going to kill Batman, feels off considering his attempt was intended to kill Batman. When you think about it, Arthur was giving the spy ample chance to warn Batman about the trap. She says they're going to wait until 11 o'clock at the climax of the telethon.
Hey, phrase it!
That's when there'll be the most cash on hand and lots of people for a diversion. Bats asks what Stephanie calls herself, and she replies, "The spoiler."
I like that. Regardless, get ready for a good 2 decades or so of ostracization and repeated orders to quit.
Issue 649, as the three deftly make their way down from the spire to the streets, which I'll get into later. Spoiler intends to explain her dad's plan en route to the telethon, but she's not going. She's too focused on payback, people could be hurt if she doesn't spill the beans, and arguing that she's older than Robin really doesn't help her case. Sorry, Tim, styling your hair that way didn't fool anyone to think you were taller and therefore older. Bats isn't going to relent, and if she wants her father caught, she'll tell them what they need to know. With about 20 minutes until the heist starts, she fesses up. Artie hired a few extra helpers, a sniper to blow out a tire of a bus on the I-90, a driver to jackknife a big rig on a bridge, creating 2 incidents that will cut off east and west access to the mall, and a third man to simply cut alarm wires at the site itself. She didn't hear how they intend to make a getaway, as they may have realized someone was listening in. The duo drive off, using alternate routes to their destination, telling Steph to go home and wait for developments on the news. But she has other ideas. To the spoiler belongs the victory. Okay, that is just clever wordplay right there. Robin thinks his bat boss was too harsh on the girl, but he's wary of her motives, more on her own side than theirs, out for revenge. At the mall, there's 10 minutes left as they near the $5 million goal, and about $1 million of in-person donations collected in a large container on the stage with a bunch of legitimate charity workers in some kind of Renaissance-themed attire. A kid tells Jimmy Fish, dressed as one of Robin Hood's merry men, he shouldn't smoke, so the goon threatens to shoot an apple off his head. Threatening small children, the best way to keep a low profile. The kid calls for his mom, who seems to have just disappeared in between panels. Where'd she go? Did she get distracted and walk off thinking he was right behind her? Or was this an oversight for a darkly humorous scene? Anyway, similarly disguised Cluemaster approaches to make sure Fish understands they're on a timetable, and everyone needs to be where instructed very soon, playing it by the book. Fish agrees, though when his boss walks off, he brandishes his gun for the reader, suggesting other ideas.
Except this book's gonna have a new ending, freak. This time, the sexy love interest is gonna fall for the weasel-faced backstabber named Jimmy Carp. Yeah, Jimmy Carp.
With minutes to go, the Batmobile races to the scene as the Dark Knight admits Cluemaster's plan is close to perfect, but wonders how he's going to haul the money away. Robin asks if this is his idea of fun, dealing with the more clever crooks, but Bruce clarifies he considers it more of a challenge. Right, it's punching them in the face that's the fun part. There's seconds left in the telethon. The host encourages people to join in counting down. And is that guy offering to donate a baby?
I've abandoned my child!
Cluemaster throws a smokescreen and takes out some security, causing the patrons to flee in a panic while his men attach large hooks to the top of the big money jar. Fish seems to come around onto Artie, how well his nutty plan is working, and they just have to wait for the transport to arrive. That's when the dynamic duo show up on the offensive, saying the police have surrounded the place and Arthur's would-be masterpiece crime is finished. Cluzy's getaway arrives, a Chinook helicopter crashing the skylight and lowering a winch, allowing him to escape with his crew as the container is lifted up. Well, most of his crew. Jimmy Fish gets left behind, and while Robin keeps him from revenge shooting his boss, Bats hitches a ride on the big jar of money.
Weird. I've had dreams almost exactly like this. Except I'm not wearing lederhosen, and my third-grade teacher isn't telling me to turn in my toaster oven.
Spoiler drops in, taking out the goons rather easily, and calling dibs on her dad.
Yet another young squire Batman, running a daycare center for misguided junior vigilantes?
No! I haven't got the zoning permits yet, and the paperwork is just a nightmare.
He manages to grab her, and threatens to use a vial of something heavily implied to scar her face, so probably some kind of acid. Meanwhile, Robin struggles to avoid Jimmy stabbing him with a glass shard, but fortunately for one of them, some police fire takes Fish out, sparing the boy wonder.
A girl smacks me with a brick, and I'm nearly stabbed by a deranged gangster that I then saw die in front of me. Good thing Bruce is rich, because I'm about to make some therapist really happy.
On the jar, Batman tells Cluemaster why he doesn't want to hurt his hostage. It's his daughter. And I thought Steph was the spoiler. Artie unmasks her, confirming it's indeed his kid, and the surprise is distraction enough for the teen to get a couple hits in before she begins throttling him with some chains, about to kill him for destroying her life. Bat says that while he probably did hurt her, she would be destroying her life by killing him.
And let's be honest, the TV movie they make about this thing is going to be so poorly produced, you'd have to ask if it would really be worth it.
This apparently sways Steph, who lets go of the chain, and the comic ends with police choppers approaching the getaway craft, as Spoiler's mask gets taken away by the wind. That was the first appearance of the Spoiler, Stephanie Brown, and I thought it was really well done, though to be fair, it isn't without some flaws. Not unlike the reinvention in the New 52, we see Steph perform feats that seem advanced for a kid from the suburbs, with no explanation of where she acquired them. The listening device may have been relatively easy to get back in 1992, and scaling skyscrapers for her graffiti clues while taking some skill isn't quite the same as easily swinging around buildings in Batman Eternal, but that meetup on the spire at the end of Part 2 kind of is, and especially the way she descended from the streets without a problem.
Skills!
Saying she was an avid mountain climber that also did gymnastics could have worked, even if it'd be a stretch, but that's never mentioned. It's only right to note these omissions, as I made similar criticisms of Eternal Steph and the Blue Idiot. Excuse me. But this doesn't annoy me as much as those other two examples. For one thing, I get the feeling Steph was meant to be a one-and-done character, but proved so popular she was upgraded to a supporting role when she popped back up in the Robin ongoing a couple years after this. While more time with her to clarify some of the less common talents would have been an improvement, one that the Eternal books could have made but also didn't, it's entirely possible that the creators didn't foresee her increase in popularity and didn't want to devote more time of a Batman book to someone they didn't plan on utilizing again. Perhaps that's why we also get that ambiguous ending, where her mask drifts off as the cops close in. Additionally, we don't get a lot of how her life was destroyed, though given that Cluemaster had been around for a while, I guess one could make some assumptions. Yeah, her mom has a prescription drug problem, but that could be independent of Arthur's criminality. Also, she wanted to stop her dad, we saw her gathering information, she did have the intel she claimed, and wasn't pulling her mask off every 3 or 4 panels, which is all much better than her rebooted counterpart. While a key player, she's not treated like more than she is, an angry girl lashing out at the one who hurt her. It just happens to be her father, who happens to be a supervillain. Part of what made the Eternal origin falter, I think, is because it was part of yet another citywide threat to Gotham in a story that wanted to be bigger and more important than it really needed to be, taking itself and its professed point of seeing what makes the Batman tick so seriously, and someone decided her new origin had to match all that. But in truth, it really didn't have to. It was weird reading her here, talking down to Tim, outright insulting him, but in her defense, he did make her crash her bike. Artie is actually portrayed pretty well, focusing on making himself rich, wanting to get rid of anyone in the way, but cunning and calculating enough not to go on some mindless killing spree. He speaks in a way as if to display his intellect without being too obvious or showy about it, like he considers himself a sophisticate, but could be construed as passive-aggressively condescending. He didn't really seem to intend to directly insult anyone, mostly. It's an interesting trait, showing he may not be one of the Bat's biggest rogues, but is confident in himself.
I do. I always have, ever since I was little. It's one of the reasons that I'm a winner.
Perhaps his costume could have used more blue, break up the orange a bit, and keep the overall color scheme consistent with his capsules. I do like Steph's original costume. It's got great colors that are well balanced and vibrant, and it has an asymmetrical element to it, like one leg having that band of what I assume are pouches, because 90s, and that one pauldron on her left shoulder. It helps the design to stand out amongst others, though I can understand stylistically why the one shoulder pad was abandoned in later years. The rest of the art is great. I thought these scans were from a trade with digital touch-ups, because it looks very clean and smooth for that era of comics. But if that's the case, I wonder why there are still these mild coloring errors, like Steph's snow-white hand and eye lenses on masks that are flesh-colored, and that reversed puzzle piece. Maybe they decided to keep those errors in for nostalgic purposes? It's nice to see classic Batman, authoritative, effective, but still limited, like not knowing how Cluemaster intends to make off with the money, though I can't help but feel something Ariel-based, if not totally obvious, could have been at least one theory among others. And it is a little weird that he didn't find out who Cluzy was, and the dialogue of when they question him suggests it might have been an alias, especially since Steph's last name is never actually mentioned here, and that he at first says finding his true name shouldn't be hard, then he claims it wasn't easy to track him down. The side story of Gordon and candidate Crawl is fine, but part of a recurring subplot throughout the titles at this time, since if I recall correctly, Armand does become mayor. At best, it's an explanation for any tension we'd see between the two later on.
Now how am I supposed to convince these idiots to vote for me?
This three-parter probably didn't intend to create a new cult favorite character, but maybe it's these more humble beginnings, and even the possibility that these were intended to be her only appearances, that are part of what made Stephanie Brown so enduring. An uncomplicated foundation that grew into something more, instead of a lot of flash and inflated stakes. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.